With many of Kevin's enemies at the gala honoring the Lumiere brothers, including Eminence, Atticus, Sympathy, the Stuntmen's Guild, and even a surprise appearance by Dominic Archer, Kevin and his team tried to strategize a way to steal the film reel which Kevin needed in order to find the portal to the upper realm. When Jericho pointed out that all of their ideas would be foiled by the huge crowd watching their every movie, Kevin pulled the fire alarm, activating the sprinklers and sending the attendees screaming for the exits. "That'll work," Jericho said as partygoers in drenched Versace gowns and Balenciaga suits sloshed towards the exit. As the chaos unfolded around them, Kevin quietly told his team, "We're not going to have much time. We need to bar the doors." As the last of the attendees trickled from the room, Adam Spatzel grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the bar on her way out. Kevin, Jericho, Emo, Sandra, and Adriana made use of the film props staged around the venue. Sandra and Adriana wedged a lightsaber and a Harry Potter broomstick behind the handles of the side doors, while Emo and Jericho blocked the main doors at the front of the dome with Bruce the Shark from Jaws. Kevin, meanwhile, began examining the glass case in the center of the room holding the Lumiere brothers' film reel. Jericho approached and held up one of his scissor hands. "Should I start punching?" he asked. "The reel needs to stay inside the case," Kevin responded. "It's too fragile to risk exposing it to the moisture and impurities in the air." "So what's the plan?" Jericho asked. "We're not going to be able to just carry this whole display out. It's got to weigh hundreds of pounds." 400, Kevin replied. "But we don't need to worry about carrying it." "What do you—" Jericho was interrupted by the loud whir of helicopter blades. The group looked up to see one of the news helicopters had broken away from the pack and was positioning itself over the center of the dome. "That chopper is getting way too close," Adriana yelled. "It's supposed to be," Kevin replied with a smile. Suddenly, the side of the helicopter swung open, revealing Dalton Steele, Kevin's longtime friend and ally from his Chicago days. It wasn't a news helicopter at all. Kevin had arranged the whole thing. Adriana laughed as she took in Kevin's latest instance of always being 2 steps ahead. "One of these days I won't be so surprised," she said. "We need to open the skylight of the dome so Dalton can lift the display through the roof," Kevin exclaimed. "Jericho, when you were scoping out the venue earlier, did you find the control room?" Jericho led the group to a small room off to the side of the venue. Inside were the controls to automate every state-of-the-art aspect of the dome. Music, lighting, projectors, security, and the skylight. "Can you hack into the system?" Kevin asked Adriana as she sat down in front of the main console. Adriana tapped a few keys and replied, "Well, I've definitely never seen a security system like this. It's not asking for a passcode." Kevin looked at the screen and saw a short clip of The Godfather playing without any sound. "It looks like it's just a screensaver," Adriana said, "but I'm not sure how to move past it." As Kevin leaned in closer, he said, "It's just the clip of Don Corleone saying, 'I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.'" There was a light ding sound and the clip flashed from the screen. A message popped up that read, "Passcode 1 of 3 unlocked." "So we just need to say the famous movie line being shown in the clips?" Sandra asked. "Clever," Adriana mused and continued, "even if not the most sophisticated means of security." The next clip that popped up was from Jaws. "I know this one," Sandra cried. "We're gonna need a bigger boat." The screen flashed red with a message that said, "Fail. One more attempt." "We can't get this wrong," Adriana said urgently. "The entire system will lock down and probably alert law enforcement if we get another error." "I know that was right," Sandra insisted. "I've seen that movie 100 times. "You were close," Kevin said calmly. As the clip restarted, he leaned in and said, "You're gonna need a bigger boat." The screen flashed green and the group exhaled a collective sigh of relief. Only one to go. The next clip that began to play was much longer than the other two. It was an entire monologue. A performance so chilling that, even without sound, it suddenly felt colder in the control room. The final clip featured none other than Meryl Streep's Oscar-nominated performance as Miranda Priestley in The Devil Wears Prada. Kevin took a deep breath. The clip was over a minute long, and they only had one chance to get it right. I've never seen this movie, he admitted, but I can read lips, so. Kevin was then interrupted by Emo's commanding voice. This stuff? Emo began as the group turned to watch him. Oh, okay, I see. You think this has nothing to do with you. Kevin, Adriana, Sandra, and Jericho watched with dropped jaws while Emo perfectly matched Meryl's timing in the clip, describing the origin of the color cerulean and giving Anne Hathaway a lesson in fashion with a perfect imitation of Meryl's quiet disdain. With a flourish, Emo concluded, You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff. The group was stunned into silence as the computer's anticlimactic ding cut the tension. Well done, Emo, Kevin said as they were granted access to the computer's mainframe. Kill the sprinklers but keep the alarms going, Kevin instructed Adriana, and open the skylight. Kevin, Jericho, and Emo rushed back into the dome as the sprinklers turned off and the giant skylight overhead began to retract. Above them, Dalton had rigged a crane to the helicopter, but the wind swirling around the chopper made it too difficult for him to center the crane over the hole left by the skylight. We have to help him lower the crane, Kevin concluded. Eyeing Jericho's scissors hands, Kevin said, Emo, climb up with me. Using the floor-to-ceiling Lumiere Brothers banners that hung from the rafters, Kevin and Emo shimmied their way up to the ceiling. When they were about halfway up, the Mission Impossible theme song began blasting from the surround sound speakers. Adriana popped her head out of the control room. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Kevin and Emo finished the climb and hauled themselves onto the roof as Dalton returned in the chopper to make another pass with the crane. As Dalton carefully lowered the helicopter and, with the crane hovering just above them over the skylight, Kevin jumped from his position on the edge of the skylight opening and successfully landed on the crane's metal bars. Emo, however, slipped from where he had been waiting on the opposite side of the skylight and began to slide down the dome, a fall that would prove deadly if he was allowed to reach the ground. Kevin used his momentum to swing the crane across the skylight and grabbed Emo's arm just before he fell out of reach. Emo caught his breath as he and Kevin rode the crane down to the floor. Remind me to freak out later about almost dying, Emo said. You got it, Kevin replied. When they reached the ground, the group got to work affixing the crane to the display case with the Lumiere Brothers film reel inside. Don't rush this, Kevin instructed as they rigged the crane. The weight of this display is going to push the crane to its capacity. If we cut corners, the rigging may not hold. At that moment, they started hearing banging and shouting outside all the exits. The lightsaber, broomstick, and Bruce the Shark, which were being used to keep the doors shut, all strained against the pressure being applied from the other side of the doors. Okay, maybe rush a little bit, Kevin amended himself. The banging grew louder as the group clipped in the final sections of a giant harness around the display case. Kevin jumped on top of the display and, though he was still dressed as Charlie Chaplin, yelled up to Dalton in a perfect Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, Get to the chopper! The group held their collective breath as the helicopter began lifting skyward. The rigging creaked and strained as the heavy display resisted leaving the ground. But finally, with a great lurch, the display case detached from the floor and began to rise. On the ground, Adriana, Sandra, Emo, and Jericho let out elated cheers as they watched Kevin and the display case lift toward the chopper. But their celebration was short-lived. Just as the display case cleared the skylight, Sergio and the Stuntmen's Guild finally burst through the main doors and pushed past Bruce the Shark. Though Sergio and his team might have come just a moment too late, the anger on their faces meant that they weren't going to let Kevin make off with the valuable film easily. A fight was surely looming.